Welcome to the Love and Alchemy podcast, talking about dating and relationship issues one question at a time. Here are your hosts, Joey and Sandra. Take it away, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our first podcast for loveandalchemy.com. We're your hosts, Joe Johnson
and Sandra. And tonight's question is it still appropriate to assume that the man is going to pay for the dates?
That's a really good question. Assume that the man is paying for the date. So
there's always that awkward moment at the end of the meal when the tab is put on the table.
And you guys just kind of awkwardly look at each other like, hey, you should pick that up or not pick that up.
Well, I think it's more awkward for the woman only because now there's this idea of going Dutch, or even in some cases the woman wanting to pay for the entire date if she had a great time, to kind of show that she's not there looking for support from a man, but that she is independent and she's honestly just wanting a good time.
Okay. So if she's trying to say that she's independent, would that mean, or would that excuse a woman for not taking money to that first date, just in case the man doesn't have money to pay for it? Because what if he's thinking to himself, you know what, we're living in a more progressive time, maybe she's going to want to go in Dutch, but how does a person even, segue into that conversation? How is he saying, hey, I really enjoyed your company tonight. I'm glad you like your pasta fajoule. Check comes out and it's about $80. How do you go to the woman respectfully and say, I need half of this money back?
I want my $40
now.
That's a really good question. That's what I mean in that it's a really awkward moment, is because we don't know. We're looking for you for cues as to whether or not you want us to pay for our part of it. At least I do. I look for those cues. And I make sure that I have an appropriate amount of money in my account. Whereas I do know of some women who will continuously date and maybe not even want something long term with anybody, but are expecting a free date, which I know is every man's fear.
Yeah, that is a really big fear. I've dated multiple women, kind of gold diggers, and we're not going to name any names in this podcast, but I've taken some women out who have just assumed that at the end of the date, everything was going to be paid for, and it was going to be a free expense. Like, they just had to show up, look pretty, have somewhat good conversation, and you get a free meal. I'm not saying that you have to sit there and work for the date and say, oh, you have to earn the right to have this meal. What I am saying is that, granted, given under the current economic times where, money is few and far between, some people who are dating currently don't have a lot of money to go out on multiple dates. So I think the assumption can be broken if you approach it with some tact. So let's give an example. Let's say, Sandra, sweetheart, that we were to go back on our first date, right? And we went to a nice little Italian restaurant called Ristorante Roma, I believe. And I looked at you, and you were like, oh, I'll pay for my half. And I, like a gentleman, said, no, I'll go ahead and pay for it. Now, is it safe to assume that every guy is going to be that way? No, it's not safe to assume that. So, how is it from the woman's perspective?
Yeah, I think if you were to ask for us to pay for our half, it's going to be awkward no matter how you present it. I think what's more important is that she actually offers to, which is what I always do, as you highlighted. But I think that you can gauge how interested the woman was either in the conversation or being there with you, wanting to continue the date, by her wanting to help participate in paying for the tab. At least I can't picture a decent woman who's really wanting to engage in future dates with you, just staring at the check and not making any kind of move towards it at all for a good 20 minutes.
Yeah. So by offering to go Dutch, or even suggesting that you want to pay for half and you want them to pay for their half, does that, and be honest, does that affect the chances of a guy having a second date?
It does.
For good or for bad?
So like I said, I will definitely volunteer even if I wasn't crazy about the guy, because I definitely don't want to feel like I owe him. And that's when I will really insist that I pay for my half. Even if he's like, no, if you have been like, babe, I got it. Don't worry about this. I'm going to say, I'm not comfortable with this. Let me pay for my half. But if a guy directly, before we've even had a minute after the check having been there, approaches me, hey, do you mind paying for your half of this? I'm definitely going to note that as a red flag, which is terrible to admit. I know it's a little bit double standard.
But if it's only been there for a minute, like it hasn't even been there for a full 60 seconds, and you're asking somebody for some kind of financial assistance, it just seems, it doesn't seem apropos.
I think that it's important that a man looks for cues from her that she wants to pay for her half, whether that be reach for it or actually verbally say, hey, do you mind if I pay for my half?
Yeah.
I think that's actually a great thing for a guy to take away from it, but still come in as you did and say, no, don't worry about this. I had a great time. It's on me.
Mm-hmm. But not every guy is going to be like me. I can already imagine some of my friends who I grew up with kind of like laughing and saying, well, you need to help me with this. I saw you eat half the food. I was here the whole time. I saw you eat it. Now let's work as a team to pay for the bill. I can already see them kind of assessing the situation as, listen, we're trying to start this thing as a team. I know I was starting off with more of a joke, but then ending with more of that philosophical insight. Is it still safe to assume that a guy should pay for the meal currently in this day and age? I don't think it's safe to assume that at all. I think that a lot of women out there, if they're looking for a guy, they need to be prepared to either order light or be willing to pay for their fair share.
And I agree with you. I do agree with you. I'm saying that she needs to have money in her bank account on hand, ready to pay for her half. She should definitely be ordering what she knows she can cover versus the most expensive thing and then a couple glasses of wine.
But that's the best part. You get the most important thing, the filet mignon. You guys both get it. And then both of you have no money, come to find out, and then you run out. That's the best part.
That's how we did it.
That's how we do it.
So, I guess we're in agreement that it's not safe as the woman to assume that prior to going into this date that you won't have to pay for anything. You definitely need to anticipate paying for your half. At the same time, we're also agreeing that it's not in the guy's best interest prior to the date to go into it thinking that she's going to pick up her half of the tab if you're wanting to snag that second date. You definitely can't ask her, hey, do you mind pitching in for your half? As much as I know you guys want to hear that it's okay to do so, I'm telling you as the woman, you're not looking like the best shot when you're having to reach out to her to help pay for the tab.
Yeah, I agree. That's totally fair.
But bonus side, women especially pay attention. A guy's going to take you much more seriously, show much more interest, and certainly want to secure a second date if you actually offer to either pay for your half of the tab or even better, offer to pay for the second date.
Oh yeah. If a girl were to do that for a guy, I promise you ladies, guys would definitely appreciate it a lot more. All right, guys. Well, that's the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can check us out at our website at www.loveandalchemy.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook at loveandalchemy.com and also on our Twitter feed at DATE Consulting. Go ahead, leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing, or just post a question. All right. Talk to you guys in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Love and Alchemy podcast at www.loveandalchemy.com.